True natures are worth seeing, glimpses of what lies beneath a surface projected to deceive. Once seen, that true nature is never forgotten. Last week, GB News commercial director Nicole O'Shea attended an advertising awards show in Manchester to present some gongs, and for her efforts was howled at by a baying mob of ad industry professionals, foul-mouthed, fist-pumping hate merchants who sought to drive her from the stage and from the event. Pause and remember this was an event organised by the advertising industry, but conducting itself more like a neo-religion, as intolerant as any other. The abusers were professional people representing an industry that, in terms of the preachy, condescending mission statements we, the intended audience, have rammed down our throats morning, noon and night by that industry, is supposedly all about inclusion, diversity and equality. But it's never about what they say it's about. Since before even a second of content had been transmitted by GB News, we'd been the target of well-funded efforts to shut us down. As well as targeting the channel, individuals in front of the camera and behind are set upon too. Much of the abuse and attempted destruction has been choreographed by an outfit calling itself, ironically, Stop Funding Hate, that employs all means at its disposal to try and make any company that advertises with us the target of bullying, to have them sever their ties. Those frauds, with the gall to pretend they're about doing away with hate, stoke hatred at every turn to get what they want. One ad agency after another, all the key players based inside the London bubble, obviously, in one ad campaign after another, exploits the notions of kindness, inclusion, diversity and equality. But scrape away the insincere exterior, and what lies beneath is their true nature, made of hatred, exclusion and the determination to drive from society anyone those haters deem a threat to their own ugly utopia. The truth can't be concealed forever, and the truth of those targeting GB News for having the temerity to give voice to the majority of people in this country, the reality that lies beneath the purveyors of kindness and inclusion is hatred. Don't be fooled by those who hide behind the promise to be kind with love hearts and rainbow flags in their bios. You can put makeup on a corpse and spray it with perfume, but the stink of decay rises soon enough. Like anything else that won't flush, that which lies beneath always bobs up to the surface. The kindness and inclusion rhetoric, not just in TV ads, but in all walks of life, was only the velvet glove concealing the clenched fist. The fist is wielded openly now because more and more people, millions of people, know they've been lied to by their leaders. Those millions refuse to back down, refuse to shut up, refuse to swallow any more of the lies, refuse to turn blind eyes and deaf ears to the wrong and the damage done, as well as to the blatant intention by the same suspects to commit more wrong and cause more harm. More and more pressure is being applied, more and more legislation to restrict free speech, to stop people going about the business of leading decent lives built on foundations of freedom. More and more of the stuff of life is being targeted by those who would demand submission. It's almost laughable, although not quite. Bungalow Joe Biden is apparently on the same page as computer software salesman and private jet enthusiast Bill Gates when it comes to plans to block out the sun. We live in a solar system and all life on Earth depends on the sun. But there you go, America's largest private landowner thinks he knows best. Spend hundreds of billions installing solar panels, then block out the sun. Genius, I call it. The sun is only the latest target, in addition to two more of the absolute foundational essentials of life on Earth, being the plant food that is CO2 and also nitrogen, both marked for cancelling and removal. In a speech he gave in 1978, Dr. Walter Yellowlees said of our world, quote, "The whole system is powered by energy from the sun, and the moon reminds us of the unfortunate propensity of man for lunacy. By lunacy, I don't mean that which afflicts the occupants of mental hospital beds. I mean his tendency to infantile behaviour, to embrace and act out irrational beliefs and idiotic ideas. This form of lunacy from time to time afflicts us all and is a condition from which no social class or group, however privileged or academic, is entirely free." End quote. Lunacy. Dr. Yellowlees got that right all the way back in 1978. I've been banging on for months about the necessity of freedom to transact, to buy and sell without interference, monitoring and downright obstruction and control. Now GB News has originated a campaign called Don't Kill Cash, since without cash and the privacy and freedom it confers, we are herded ever closer to the imprisonment of the 15-minute ghettos. Once central bank digital currencies replace all other means of transaction, aided and abetted by digital IDs and the rest of the traps enabling social credit scoring, populations will be entirely at the mercy of those who would dictate every thought and action of the billions of inconvenient human beings and their pesky aspirations. It's never about what they say it's about. If they say it's about kindness, it's about hatred. If they say it's about saving the planet for all, it's about stealing the planet for them. If they say it's about democracy, it's about totalitarianism. If they say it's about peace, it's about war, forever war. You can easily spot a neoliberal because he's all about ending liberty. You can spot a neoliberal because he's about censorship and cancellation. You can spot a neoliberal because he's about denying the existence of women. You can spot a neoliberal because he's all about war. If he says it's about convenience for you, then it's about control for him. If he says it's free, then the price is astronomical and you're the product for sale. In the end, if we don't resist, the ultimate price will be our souls. If they say it's about stopping the funding of hate, then it's about the application of thuggery, name-calling. If he says it's about equality, it's about racism, all sorts of racism. What it's always about is control of us by them. And we see where the road leads, to a mob hurling abuse at a lone woman. Are you content to live in a society where, if your opinion is counter to that of the powerful and you express it or otherwise stand up for it, you'll find yourself with your back against a wall? When the war in Ukraine started, there were many with questions about the geopolitics, and we were silenced as Putin apologists. And then last week, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., would-be President of the United States of America, openly talked about former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson as the NATO bag carrier who went to Ukraine when he was told to, and there scuppered any hopes of peace and an end to that war. Kennedy set Johnson's name alongside the hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians and Russians who have died since then. Who could ever have imagined, far less predicted, hearing as much said about a British Prime Minister of yesterday by a potential American President of tomorrow? Now the United States will send cluster bombs that Ukrainians might drop on fellow Ukrainians. Cluster bombs, as bad as landmines and deemed unforgivable around the world. And yet that bitter crop will be sown in Ukrainian fields, there to lie in wait for generations of farmers and children who'll die as collateral damage in the decades ahead. If it's far right to question war that's enriching the few, to stand up and speak for the survival of cultures across Europe and around the world, to speak up for the rights of women, to abhor war as profit, then right-wing I must be. Remember, it's all being stoked by those who care only about themselves and power. Damned fools who would spit abuse into the face of a lone woman at an awards ceremony because she represents an organisation doing its best to promote freedom of speech and breadth of opinion are yet more puppets, their strings pulled by those who would set people at each other's throats on whatever grounds seem most likely to have the desired effect: skin colour, belief, opinion. If we're angry with each other, it's because too many have been distracted, too distracted properly to direct their righteous fury toward the tiny source of the real problem. The moment we stop hurling abuse at one another, being intolerant of one another, the moment we come together as people, white, black and brown, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist or no religion at all, the moment we come together as human beings united by faith in family and freedom, when that moment comes, then it's over for the totalitarians and the rest of the few that want this world for themselves. This is a war for our future and our children. Last week in the USA, Independence Day, as it happens, saw the opening of a movie called Sound of Freedom. It's about the efforts of one Tim Ballard, sometimes special agent for the Department of Homeland Security, who walked away from his job to risk and dedicate his life to saving children from child trafficking. Child trafficking is more profitable than international arms trading. It'll soon be more profitable than the drugs trade. Millions of children are being traded, raped and murdered. Maybe you've heard of this man and this story and this movie. Maybe you haven't. If you haven't, it's likely because of a huge and concerted effort by the powerful to prevent any of it seeing the light of day. In spite of that effort, it has been the biggest selling movie in the US this week. Here's the thing. Ask yourself why the powers that be would encourage spitting bile at those who don't share their worldview while preferring to ignore the buying and selling of babies and children. Ask yourself that question and wonder about the extent to which millions of people have been distracted from the necessity to make the truth the paramount concern of our civilization, indeed, the paramount concern of our species, before it really is too late.